Most people think that speaking up is hard because they don't know what to say. But in reality, speaking up is hard because being human means caring about connection. So today, I want to talk to you about the surprising reason why so many brilliant, thoughtful, caring people stay silent, and why the goal is actually not being fearless. It's something else. Hey, and welcome back to Soulshine, the Art of Becoming. So 1 year ago, I launched this podcast, not because I felt ready and not because I suddenly found confidence, not because I figured out exactly what I wanted to say. I was terrified of putting myself out there, terrified of being misunderstood, terrified of saying something that wasn't going to land with people or wasn't very articulate or impactful to people. And every episode felt so vulnerable. Every post felt vulnerable, every share. And if you've listened to the anniversary episode, I'll point you there for the full story. It's called One Beautiful Year. What I was creating was actually creating me. And there you can hear the whole story. If you haven't heard it, I'll just quickly lay down the meat of it, which is me sharing how expression became a vehicle for self-discovery, and how I didn't find my voice and then start speaking. I found my voice by speaking, by creating, by participating, by expressing before I knew exactly who I was becoming. So today I'm going to build upon that because there's an important question that naturally follows. If expression is so powerful, if our voice helps us discover more of who we are, then why do so many of us lose access to it? Why do we stay silent? Why do we wait? Why do we shrink? And that's what this episode is about. This is a 2-part series, and in next week, we'll explore the second half of this conversation in an episode called The Truth About Your Voice, Words That Move the World. Because understanding why we stay silent in this conversation today is half of the story. The other half is understanding why speaking even matters. So today, why we lose our voice. Next episode, why it's worth reclaiming. So to walk through today, we're going to go through 4 different ideas. First is why your brain thinks that silence is safety. Second, why silence protects our sense of belonging. And third, why waiting keeps us stuck. And lastly, what helps us speak up anyways? But just to set the stage for the rest of this episode together, this episode isn't really just about speaking only or the act of speaking. It's more about the humanity under the speaking. It's about protection, because I think a lot of conversations about finding your voice just jump immediately to confidence, communication skills, courage. And all of that is wonderful and needed. And before we can understand expression, I invite us to understand and honor silence, because silence isn't a flaw. It's an adaptation, a strategy, an attempt to stay accepted, connected, and safe. And when we understand that, we can stop shaming ourselves for being human. So let's start at the first point in this conversation, why your brain thinks that silence is safety. We're going to start with our nervous system. So doing research for this episode, as usual, bringing you the science for it, one of the coolest things I did not know about our brains and about neuroscience is, get this, social rejection, activates some of the same brain regions involved in physical pain. So that means that being judged literally hurts. Being excluded literally hurts. Being misunderstood hurts. Yes, metaphorically, emotionally, but also literally, your brain experiences social threat as something meaningful and important and can cause physical pain to people. So of course it makes sense that every time you consider posting that thing, sharing that idea at work, raising your hand, asking the question, setting the boundary, starting the podcast, your nervous system isn't asking oh, this is going to help me grow. It's asking oh my God, am I going to get rejected? Am I going to survive? And I just want to give it up to the brain, you guys, because I think that sometimes, like, and especially in personal development, the brain or like our human fears get a bad rap that like that's weak and that's primal or primitive. But you guys, that's not weakness. That is intelligence because that's survival. And thousands of years ago, belonging wasn't a luxury like it is today. It was literally safety. To be excluded from the tribe literally meant death. So of course, like let's, have some compassion for our brains, for our evolution as humans, to our nervous system. It's still going to react when visibility feels risky. Like, yes, of course our heart is going to race. Of course our stomach is going to tighten. Of course our mind is going to start looking for all the reasons to wait. And so what I want to offer you with that is just the reminder that the fear isn't proof that you're doing something wrong. It is simply proof that your nervous system is doing exactly what it was evolved to do, to protect you, to protect belonging, to protect connection, to protect safety. And I remember the first time that I learned about like trauma responses and trauma and nervous system regulation. I want to say this was probably like 2022 or something around then. I went to a conference and a psychiatrist taught it to a bunch of like physician coaches. And I thought it was so liberating just to know it, because once I understood what was happening, it really allowed me to become the observer of the fear. And I could stop making the fear mean like, oh my God, this is definitely going to fail. I'm doing this wrong. This shouldn't feel so hard. If this was like a good thing, it would be easier. And I could just stop interpreting it as evidence that I wasn't ready. I wasn't capable. I shouldn't do the thing. Instead, I was like, oh my God, my brain's just protecting me? Wait a minute. Like, hey, nervous system. Okay, I see you up there. You think we're in danger? Okay. And that being the observer creates space. Yep, you got it. Space to regulate, space to choose. We know that that space is where our response comes from instead of our reaction. We know that that's where our agency comes from. And like, even now, just because I know this information, it doesn't erase the human experience. Before speaking, before a difficult conversation, before sharing something vulnerable online, I still get the heart pounding. I still get the sweaty palms. I still feel my stomach drop, And now, to help me regulate, I just literally tell my brain I love it. Maybe this sounds cheesy, but this is what I do. I just say, I love you too. And I pretend that I'm talking to my brain, and I just tell it like, I know you're trying to keep me safe. Thank you, brain. I love you too. And you know what? I've got us from here. I do my little grounding breaths. I put myself back in the present moment, and I move forward with the sweaty palms, with the heart beating, with the stomach in my heart in my stomach, not because like that fear, that physiologic response goes away, but because I then can choose to respond with it, to create from it. It's not something I have to fix or erase or eliminate or wait until it goes away. So just knowing that has been so liberating. That's what I want you to get out of this, to remember that your brain simply thinks that silence is safety. Okay, so we kind of alluded to this before, that safety comes from belonging. The second reason we stay silent that I want you to know is that belonging matters. Humans don't simply just want connection as a lovely thing. We actually very deeply need it. It's one of the deepest motivations that we have, is the desire to belong. Researchers have found that social exclusion threatens some of our most fundamental psychological needs, including the need to belong, the need for self-esteem, and the feeling that we matter. So when we understand that, it continues to make sense. This is why we shrink. This is why we edit ourselves. This is why we soften our opinions, why we don't ask the question, why we stay quiet in rooms where we desperately want to contribute. So many of us have learned, either consciously or unconsciously, don't be too emotional. Don't be too ambitious. Don't be too weird. Don't be too sensitive. Don't be too much. Because somewhere along the way, that kind of visibility was associated with risk. And again, this doesn't just disappear because now we're adults or because we learned this at a conference somewhere. It just changes in different ways that it shows up. But we still are human, even though we know this. So like for me, I can remember experiencing this when I was early on in my career, walking into rooms with people who were so much more experienced, more accomplished, more knowledgeable. And I would have an idea, or I'd have a perspective, or I'd have a question. But should I say something or should I stay quiet? Because I don't know, maybe they're going to judge me. Maybe that's really too simple. Maybe I'm the only one who thinks that way, right? And then slowly, maybe I would find more evidence that I belonged and I could start taking that risk. But I'm still human. Now, with Soulshine and coaching, even as a new entrepreneur, I'll be in rooms with, oh my God, successful women. Holy smokes, women that I admire, women that have built extraordinary things. And I feel it again. Is this perspective going to be too simple? Is this idea going to be really far out there? Is this going to make me weird or outcasted, right? And it's the same thing. I'm human. I want to shrink. I want to self-edit. I want to defer. I have that little voice saying, just listen, just listen, just take it all in, kind of see what the vibes are, see what the belief systems are so that you can adapt, so that you can kind of be belonging in the same, milieu as everyone else. And yes, I'm not saying we shouldn't listen. Of course, listening is valuable, but sometimes that voice, if it's from wisdom and intuition, yes, please listen. But if that voice is from self-protection, that's different, right? That's really what we're talking about. And how many times are we going to experience this over and over and over, where we're now in a new environment, in a new role, in a new opportunity to discover ourselves again, or a different part of ourselves, a new level of growth. And so just because we've gone through this once doesn't mean we'll never go through it again. We're going to meet it over and over. And each time is another beautiful opportunity where we get to observe it and we get to choose. And I want to take us then to the third point, because the real enemy isn't fear. We've spent this first half of this episode really softening around what it means to be human, and that nothing has gone wrong, and that it's part of our experience, and it's nothing we have to judge or fix or solve for. It's invited into the experience. It's invited to come with us, that fear, that need for belonging, that need for safety. All of that is welcome. So if that's true, then maybe fear isn't the bad guy. Maybe waiting is really the thing that we need to drop our resistance to. We're so resistant to having fear that we do all these things to protect ourselves from the fear. But if we're allowed to be human, and we're allowed to be scared, and we're allowed to know that we have needs, then maybe with nothing to resist with the fear. Maybe the fear is welcome too. Maybe it's the resistance itself, the resistance to the human experience that can just dissolve away. We stay silent so often because we believe that we have to be ready, that we can only speak when we feel confident, when we feel certain, when we feel prepared, when we have the perfect words. But readiness is not the prerequisite to participate. Readiness is the result of participating. I know that sounds so backwards. I'll say it again. Readiness is not the prerequisite to participating. It is the result of the participation. I'll share with you a personal story that was so painfully humbling. When I first started coaching in 2020, for the first few months, I was just coaching one small group of trainees. And I was so terrified. And you guys, this wasn't public speaking. This isn't being on a stage. This isn't being that seen, right? I was just so scared I was going to fail them. Scared that I wasn't going to be able to challenge their paradigms with love. Scared I wasn't going to be able to guide them towards insight and transformation that I was so wanting them to experience. So, like any good perfectionist, what did I do? But try to overachieve and over prepare and control and tighten my grip on everything. So the night before, each time we met, I would pull up some slides and I would spend like an hour, okay, preparing the concept, preparing the sentences of how I was going to convey this, what examples I was going to give, like what might come up and how could I respond and how could I get them to feel like more soft and feel more open, and how could I control, basically, how could I control how they were going to receive it, how they were going to feel, and what transformation they were going to happen. Wow. Yeah. So the next day, you can just imagine, it's like the worst coaching sessions ever. I would go and I would, instead of coaching them, I would basically lecture them for like 50 minutes of the 60 minutes because I so tightly wanted to control everything, leaving like 10 minutes for coaching, which in hindsight is just ridiculous and hilarious because coaching is all about curiosity and risk and like, dynamic, and it requires a lot of uncertainty. Like that's the kind of the point of it. And, letting real people bring in real problems into the room. And I was just literally just trying to avoid all of that because of all the reasons we mentioned before. You want to be safe, you want to belong, and I didn't want the fear. So I had a lot of resistance to it. I would even notice it that night before I'm preparing. I'm like, girl, this is ridiculous. Are you lecturing them? Or are you coaching them? I'm like, no, it's okay. I just want to be ready just in case. I promise you, future Saidie, I'll let you coach. Yeah. And then the session would start and people would be all engaged and like, oh, great. They're engaged. Look, I'm getting them on the path. So let me keep gripping tighter. And I would just talk at them more. And then eventually their attention would drift a little bit. And instead of loosening my grip, I'd like tighten it even more. Oh my God, let me get them back. Let me talk to them more, explain them more, control more. Oh my God, you guys, it was really humbling. The poor cohort of 2020. Wow. It was somewhere in my mind. I literally believed if I could just say it perfectly enough, bippity boppity boo, transformation would happen. Like it was all up to me, Wow. And after weeks of doing this, it was just like, man, girl, Saidie, I'm honest with you. Like, you got to let this go. Like, clearly what you've done, lecturing at them, they're not being transformed by you. So how much worse could it be if you actually coach them? And I remember so clearly the next session, my heart was pounding, my palms were sweating, like you already know. And I just took a few minutes to introduce the tool. That's it, for maybe 10 minutes. And then the rest of the 15 minutes, it was like open room. And you know what happened? It was imperfect. It was messy. It was totally unscripted. And it was completely real. Their fears came up. Their dreams came up. Stories came up. Sharing about patients and families and future babies and moves and uncertainties. And there was laughter and there was tears. There were moments of realization because there was moments of vulnerability. There were moments of empowerment. There was moments that I could never have scripted. And it was infinitely more transformative than anything I could have spent hours preparing. And I just remember leaving on this high after that. I thought I was protecting them from my imperfections. But you know who I was actually protecting? Was myself from the uncertainty. But in doing so, I accidentally withheld the very thing they needed most. Their own participation in their own transformation. That's what coaching is all about. You're just supposed to be a guide. You're supposed to be a mirror. Just show them their thoughts and get out of the way. Right? Just hold space, curiosity, compassion, and just pulling out questions. Just asking them questions. Oh, that experience taught me so much. And part of what it taught me is that silence isn't always saying nothing. Silence can also look like speaking in a way that prevents anyone from seeing you. So just in my example, silence can look like over-preparing, controlling, perfecting, performing, lecturing instead of holding space and curiosity and relating. It can look like explaining instead of engaging. Tell me more. It might look like talking at someone instead of participating in a, dialogue. My silence wasn't the absence of words in this example, but it was hiding behind my words. And how many of us do this? I still do this. I still have to catch myself. Waiting till we're certain. We polish until we're exhausted, until it's lost its edge, until it lost the heart of it. And it's not because we don't care. It's like the opposite. We care so deeply. And we're also trying to protect ourselves from uncertainty. And transformation rarely happens inside of control. It happens inside of participation. And that day or that season taught me that, yeah, perfection creates control, but participation creates transformation. And sometimes the thing that we're waiting to perfect, the waiting, is the very thing preventing us from the growing. I'm going to pause quickly before we continue, because if you are enjoying this conversation, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, share it with a friend, and for extra brownie points, please rate and review the pod. I don't even care if it's a 1-star or a 5-star. What matters to me is your real honest thoughts, is that participation that we were just talking about. In that participation is transformation. I would rather participate with a community that has so much feedback to give me than perfecting something that there's no engagement. And if you screenshot your rate and review and you email it to hello@soulshine.global, I will enter you into a draw for a free 1-hour coaching session with me once we hit the 50 review milestone. So thank you for all of those people who have rated and reviewed. Just send me the email if you want to be dropped into the draw. This is how this space grows, because generous, beautiful people like you share this conversation, and that helps reach the people who need it the most. Okay, let's get back to the fourth reason of why we stay silent. And we've talked about fear being normal. We've talked about belonging, mattering, and we've talked about resisting the fear keeps us in the waiting game. So we're stuck. So what helps people speak up anyways? Well, I have a surprise for you, because a lot of people would say confidence, and a lot of people would say just be fearless. And it's actually not that. One of the strongest predictors is psychological safety. It's the belief that you can take a risk and still be safe. You can take a risk and still belong, which is a beautiful antidote to the whole first part of this episode, where we talked about our need for belonging and our need for safety. If we can satisfy those needs, then we can take the risk. So people don't speak up because they think they'll succeed. People don't speak up because they think it's going to be perfect. People don't speak up because they know everyone's going to agree. They speak up because they can take a risk and still belong and still be safe, to remain connected to yourself and to others while being honest. Psychological safety is such a beautiful field of research, and it spans from everything from the individual all the way up to the cultural, organizational spectrum. And the interventions are also multi-level. But in this space of Soulshine, I mostly bring you the individual, because all of our environments are different. But the one thing I know is I'm speaking to you, and I believe in your power. I believe in your maturity. I believe in your possibility to change the environment around you and to be a part of that. So there is a ton on organizational psychological safety that is out there that you can research. But I want to talk to you about psychological safety being something that you can cultivate within yourself. And there's so many different ways that you could do this. Part of it comes from nervous system regulation, which is learning how to stay present when the discomfort arises. Part of that is self-compassion, learning how to respond to mistakes without attacking ourselves, rejecting ourselves, right? Not making ourselves feel unsafe on the inside or not belonging on the inside. Part of it might come from supportive relationships. And this is where, there's no one right way to cultivate psychological safety. So I'm just giving you different ideas, and I'm sure there's more than what I'm sharing with you. So it could look like coaching. It could look like therapy. It could look like mentorship. It could look like community. It could look like somatic work. It could look like healing. It could look like as simple and free as friendships, where honesty is welcomed rather than like punished or held against you. There's so many different avenues and flavors where this concept can be nurtured and learned and practiced. And no matter which way you are cultivating it, that experience of proving to ourselves, I can survive visibility. I can survive disagreement. I can survive imperfection. And every time that we take a small risk and discover, I'm okay. okay, that worked out. Our capacity expands. And I think that that's what courage really is. It's not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to remain open in the presence of fear, to run with the fear, to create from the fear, to bring the fear along for the ride. The willingness to let your truth matter more than your self-protection. The willingness to participate in your life before you're certain. So in our ending tradition, and I don't want you to leave this space only inspired. I want you to leave with a practice. I want you to leave with transformation possible for you. So here is your invitation. Think of one place in your life where you've been waiting. Maybe it's one conversation, one idea, one boundary, one creative project, one truth, something you've been postponing because it feels scary, because you don't feel ready. And I want you to ask yourself, okay, in the next 48 hours, what is the smallest visible action I can take? Not someday, not eventually, within the next 48 hours. Can I send the email? Can I ask the question? Can I share the post? Can I record the video? Can I start the conversation? Can I raise my hand? Whatever that is. And here is the transformational moment, because if it was just that easy, you would have already done it. But linking everything back from today, the reason why it's not that easy is because the way we relate to our fear and to ourselves and to risk-taking and to safety. So I'm going to ask you to do the same thing that I do, and you can change the words. But when you go to write that email, to raise your hand, to start that conversation, whatever that smallest visible action you identified for yourself is in the next 48 hours, and you feel your heart pounding and you feel your palms sweating and you feel your heart drops into your stomach, I want you to take a breath and I want you to tell your brain, I love you too. I know you're just trying to protect me and I've got you. And breathe, ground, whatever you need to do. And with your heart beating and with your palms sweating, send the email, raise the hand, and do the thing with the fear. Invite the fear to come along. Come on, fear. We're going for the most wild ride today. Invite it. Transformation doesn't happen while we're waiting. And transformation doesn't happen by doing the same thing we have always done. It happens by participating. It happens by creating space to create a conscious, intentional choice with our deliberate creative power. And all of this conviction is at the heart of my latest program called Wild Words, the Art of Spoken Expression. I am so thrilled to bring this into the world because it's not like a traditional speaking program. There are so many places you could go to learn presentation skills, content strategy, storytelling frameworks, podcasting techniques, performance tools, and all of that is very valuable. And we need the strategies and the tools. But that's only half the story. The foundation of Wild Words is to take us to a much deeper human question. What is your relationship with your voice? I'm not talking about your speaking ability, your voice, your truth, your lived experience, your self-trust, your conviction, the frequency that you carry when you speak from what you know in your bones and not what you've memorized in your mind. At its heart, Wild Words is built around these three beautiful relationships. The relationship with the truth of who you are, the relationship with the art of your spirit, and the relationship with the legacy of your impact, the way that words ripple out around you and connect you to something larger than yourself. Because what I know is that meaningful expression is not just about words in the air, communication. It's about embodiment. It's about learning to trust that lived experience enough to let it become wisdom. It's about transforming insight into art, compassion into connection, conviction into contribution. Yes, speaking is a skill, but resonant communication, that is an art. Communicating in a way that resonates with you, with what you believe in, with who you are, and resonates with the field around you. That is an art rooted in self-trust, in presence, in embodiment, in service. Because when your words emerge from who you truly are, people don't just hear them, they feel them. And I am so excited to bring this out into the world. If you're not sure if wild words is the next step for you, I have a beautiful masterclass called Fearless is Not the Answer. Speak before you're ready, because it is a beautiful companion to today's conversation. We talked a lot already about fearlessness not being the goal. So what is the goal? Willingness. The willingness to participate before the certainty arrives. The willingness to speak before the confidence catches up to you. The willingness to trust yourself enough just to take that next visible step. And in that masterclass, it gives you more the practical entry points to enter courageous conversations. Not through like a confidence hack, not just like be brave or fake it till you make it, not by being someone else, but how do we take the fear with us and find the most gentle ways to connect? Because that's what today has been all about. Being human is about being connected to something that matters to you, connected to a community, to a cause, to a purpose, to something greater than you. So how can we identify those connection points as entry points, as a bridge, so that the fear can come with us and enter into these courageous conversations? And once you understand that your brain is here to protect you, you can stop fighting yourself and you can allow your voice to participate, to emerge, to connect with what matters to you, who matters to you. The information for both of those experiences will be in the show notes. And in the next part of this podcast series, we're going to explore a different question. Not why we stay silent, but why our silence matters. Or really the flip side, why our voice matters, why our participation matters. Because one of the greatest misconceptions is that our words only affect us or this person in front of us. But what if every act of honest expression creates consequences that you might never really fully see? What if your voice matters far more than you think it does? And that's what we're going to explore in the next podcast series, the truth about your voice, words that move the world. I will see you there. I'm wishing you all play, possibility, and peace, and I'm wishing you to feel supported in this space, and I am so honored to be a part of your soul tribe. I'm sending you love, and I'll see you next week. Bye.